Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, July 19th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Dr. Michael Osterholm, Director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy, and former member of the COVID-19 Transition Advisory Board for then President-elect Joe Biden on the state of COVID in this country and around the world. Meanwhile, in Washington, Chuck Schumer sets a Portman Cinema infrastructure test vote for Wednesday and sets a deadline for a top-line agreement on the all-Democratic reconciliation infrastructure bill. Meanwhile, speaking of the former, Portman now says that greater IRS enforcement as a pay-for of the bipartisan bill is off the table because the CDC director warns of a pandemic of the unvaccinated, as every state in the nation is seeing an uptick in infections. Delta, now the variant, sweeps across the African continent as Namibia and Tunisia are the top countries for per capita deaths. Canada's vaccination rate is now higher than the U.S. as England lifts its restrictions. Meanwhile, in Texas, a George W. Bush-appointed federal judge rules that DACA is illegal. No more applications for the time being. The Biden administration transfers its first detainee from Guantanamo, a man who had been recommended for discharge over 5 years ago. U.S. to formally accuse China of hacking Microsoft. And a private Israeli firm has developed spyware which has been used to hack cell phones of journalists and activists around the world. Lastly, it's day 14 of the Frito-Lay strike in Kansas as the Pepsi boycott grows in response to that. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, folks. Beginning of another exciting week in the, on one hand, infrastructure lottery, and on the other hand, watching this country sort of eat itself when it comes to vaccination refusal. And here to watch all of it with me, Emma Vigland. Hello, Emma. How are you?
I'm well. How are you? I mean, exciting is one way of putting it, right?
Yes. It's exciting and sad.
Yeah.
Sad and exciting.
Sounds like the Harry Potter books that you're reading right now.
We were talking Harry Potter. Saul and I went to the Harry Potter store in New York City. That's not an endorsement.
And you even saying that sounds like a non-endorsement.
I'm not going to endorse that. It's like I on one hand, I'm glad that he's into something that is written and not, on his iPad, with Minecraft. On the other hand, I sort of feel bad. Like, do we really need to, does this really need to be a commodity? But then on the other hand, I was sort of excited to taste butterbeer.
How was it? Was it actual beer?
It is essentially butterscotch soda.
Oh.
So once you taste it, then you're not so excited to taste it again.
If
it's
it
a
was
little
actual
bit,
beer,
little bit rich.
Maybe they have an adult version.
They don't.
Oh.
They did also have butterscotch ice cream, and so that was, yeah. So there you go.
You're
but
right.
moving right along, want to get to the doctor soon, but there is a sense now between what's happening in Canada. Remember, like 2 or 3 months ago, everyone's hair was on fire in Canada, and we had people calling in talking about what a crap show their vaccine rollout was. And then they figured it out. They got a way to distribute it. And now all of a sudden their vaccination rate is higher than ours because we have a real problem in this country in terms of, on one hand, trust of government, trust of science, and then on another hand, a deliberate agenda, a political agenda to prevent people from being vaccinated as some way of, in its crassest form, I guess, to deny Joe Biden a win, but also to promote this notion of a sort of libertarian streak. And of course, it flies in the face of, we've had vaccination passports that have existed in the past where you need to be vaccinated to travel to a certain country. We have had vaccination passports to the extent that, if you want to send your kid to public school, they need certain vaccinations. We have vaccination passports for camps. Can't send your kid to most camps unless they've received their vaccinations.
Right. And and globally now kids are getting vaccinated for those other diseases at a less significant rate because of, the backlog from COVID vaccines. So some of these things are going to continue to sprout up, like measles and all those things.
Right. And then, we just saw Tennessee last week made a concerted effort to pull back on its efforts to vaccinate kids for all the things that kids get vaccinated for. And so this is insane. It's nuts. It's nuts. I mean, this is, and if there was, I don't know if there was ever, if anybody ever needed proof that Donald Trump was not an anomaly, that Donald Trump wasn't the problem, but rather a symptom of a deeper problem in this country, this is it, right? I mean, this is it right here. The idea that there's a concerted effort by the conservatives in this country to inhibit vaccinations, particularly, even at this point, we are late in the game in terms of being vaccine hesitant because you're not sure about the safety of the vaccine. But here is Alex Berenson, one of the premier misinformers in the country, I would say, on with Tucker Carlson. And we will have an epidemiologist on in a couple of minutes to assess this statement, the idea that masks are symbolic. But here is Berenson and Carlson.
Alex Berenson joins us now. Alex, thanks so much for coming on. There's just so much here, and you may know too much to give a crisp answer. So I'm just going to throw it out to you. How do you assess the developments I just explained?
So, look, masks are useless for their wearers. Again, we've known this for at least a year. We have a randomized controlled trial showing it. They probably do little to nothing for source control, i.e. to block the transmission of virus. We've known that too. Maybe if you decide to wear an N95 mask and have it on your face the whole time, you're out and never touch it, you get some minor benefit, although even that is not really proven. As you said, I mean, what I've grown to conclude over the last 12 months is that masks are very simply symbolic. All they are is a sign you are in a dangerous time. You need to listen to us. If I don't see people wearing masks, I forget to be scared. And that's why they want people wearing masks. And it just could not be clearer.
The psychological damage they're doing here. So we're now told there's a third wave. And this may undercut the effectiveness of the vaccines. How effective are the vaccines? Do we know so far?
The vaccines, unfortunately, appear to be declining in effectiveness very quickly. And I believe this is why Twitter has me blocked. So I've been blocked for 12 hours, Tucker. But this is a very clear warning signal. I've never been blocked on Twitter before. And I've written a lot of stuff about masks and, lockdowns and lots of stuff that people have not liked, even though it's all been backed by data, all been backed by, primary government sources and scientific papers and stuff. Vaccines appear to me to be a third rail. There's tremendous public health pressure, and there's also tremendous financial pressure in favor of these vaccines.
Well, there you have it. I mean, we will ask a top epidemiologist in the country if vaccines are getting less effective, as opposed to there are certain variants where they have less efficacy in terms of infections versus, hospitalizations or deaths. We will fact check that for Alex Berenson in just a moment. But this is a guy who is known as being more wrong than just about any public person.
The pandemic's wrongest man.
There you
Read
go.
that piece in The Atlantic and then trust this guy or don't.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Michael Osterholm. Folks, oh gosh. Is it, it is, well, my pitch about bidets, ladies and gentlemen.
Unfortunately, we do.
Yes.
Well, it's just your pitch that
It's not my pitch. I mean, this is, I won't read it today, but this is, they suggest to you a certain copy. And it's usually talking about the hygiene or the sensation of your buttocks. And this, of course, during COVID, big toilet paper shortage. At one point, Kyle says to me, you got to get a bidet. I'm like, dude, I can't invest that kind of thing. And then just coincidentally, Hello Tushy wanted to advertise with us. I said, I'll try it out, see if I like it. If I don't, I'm not going to. And I never looked back. Whoa. How's that for a pun? Look, you're going to keep your sweatiness all clean all summer with the brand new Hello Tushy 3.0 modern bidet attachment. And incidentally, I got the 2.0 originally, and now I'm at the 3.0. It is stylish, it is eco-friendly, it is super easy to install, and it saves you money on an operating basis because you're not paying for toilet paper. You just basically pat yourself when you're done. Hello Tushy doesn't just clean your butt with a precise stream of fresh water. It cleans itself with the Smart Spray automatic nozzle. It attaches to your existing toilet. Like I say, no electricity or extra plumbing needed. Super easy to install. Cuts your toilet paper use by over 80%. Pays for itself in a few months. Yes, because it is really surprisingly inexpensive. Hello Tushy also has you covered with a 60-day risk-free guarantee and a 12-month warranty. Already got a Hello Tushy on the pot? Treat your butt to a new 3.0 model. And if you're new to the revolution, know that you're joining millions of happy Hello Tushy customers. I'm telling you, folks, it is a revelation. People have said it before. You don't wash your hands. You get your hands dirty. You don't wash it by just putting a dry piece of paper on it. No, you use water. It is, it's an old but an obvious and new technology. Defeat swamp ass. Go to hellotushy.com/majority. Get 10% off plus free shipping. This is a special offer for our listeners at hellotushy.com/majority for 10% off. hellotushy.com/majority. And folks, our new guy, have we introduced our new guy yet?
We're doing it letter by letter.
Oh, yeah. Our BR, who is with us now, in many respects, came to us from ZipRecruiter, because Brendan came to us via ZipRecruiter and BR came to us via Brendan. So it's like a ZipRecruiter electricity.
Yeah.
If you're a business owner who's hiring, you know that you face a lot of challenges when it comes to finding the right person for your role. We needed someone so specific for this job, and to have a stranger come in and have them have the skill set already there in this business was nuts. But ZipRecruiter found them. Hiring can feel like trying to find a needle in a haystack, and we found them. You can post your job on some job board, but then all you do is hope that the right person comes along. And that's why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/majority. When you post a job on ZipRecruiter, it gets sent out to over 100 job sites with one click. And then ZipRecruiter's got this technology that matches people with the right skills and experience for your job and then actively invites them to apply. That's what happened with Brendan. In fact, ZipRecruiter is so effective, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. It's no wonder over 2.3 million businesses have come to ZipRecruiter for their hiring needs, and this is one of them. So while other companies overwhelm you with way too many options, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for, the needle in the haystack. Right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at this web address, ZipRecruiter.com/majority. Once again, remember, go to this unique place, ZipRecruiter.com/majority, MAJORITY. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Okay, I want to welcome back to the program Dr. Michael Osterholm. He is the director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy, was also a member of Joe Biden's COVID-19 transition team advisory board. He's logging on as we speak. Dr. Osterholm, thank you so much for joining us again. I'm here with Emma Vigeland.
Thank you. Hi, good day. Good to see you.
I've got a lot of questions. I've asked our listeners, for some questions that we can ask. But let's just start with an overall sense of where we are in the course of this pandemic. I think, our audience is fully aware, at the very least, of the Delta variant, and that it is more infectious, if not more virulent, and maybe you can clarify that for us as well. But give us a sense from your perspective where we are in this pandemic.
Well, first of all, we have to understand we're really dealing with, in a sense, two different pandemics right now. There's the pandemic of the vaccinated countries, and there's the pandemic of the unvaccinated countries. Let me just step back and say, remember, right now we have about 6.4 billion people in the face of the earth that live in low and middle income countries, for which less than 2% have had any access to vaccine. Where that's occurring, we are seeing major activity with Delta, surpassing any peak we've seen. South Africa right now has just hit the highest peak that any country's hit, period, since the beginning of the pandemic in terms of cases, deaths, and hospitalizations. Tunisia's healthcare system has crashed. We're seeing, even today as we speak on the Olympics, the highest number of cases reported in Tokyo since the pandemic began. We're seeing that throughout the world. So what's happening is this virus is, in a sense, almost rotating around the world in a non-predicted way, meaning which country is going to be the next one to get hit. Iran right now is in its 5th surge it's had, the worst one so far. So from that standpoint, if you look at what's happening throughout much of the world, it is at the very peak of the pandemic activity we've seen to date. If you're in the countries that are vaccinated or have access to a substantial vaccine, we're still seeing a major problem. Right now, we have more people hospitalized in ICUs in Florida, Mississippi, and Louisiana than we had at any time in the pandemic to date. If you look at what's happening in all 50 states in the country right now, we're seeing sizable increases in cases. And in fact, if you look, 30 states right now have had over 100% increase in cases in the last 14 days. This is largely among those 100 million people in the United States that have not gotten vaccinated yet, 100 million people. These are also people who have not been previously infected, so they have no residual protection. That's a lot of human wood for this coronavirus forest fire to burn. And so we're going to see marked activity here. Those who predicted no summertime peak, it would be a fall winter peak, I'm afraid you're unfortunately off. This is a summer peak. Why we didn't see more of a peak activity with B117 in April, we don't know. It was Michigan and Minnesota, but this one is for real. It's hitting all of us. And it's hitting England right now on Saturday. England reported 55,000 new cases. They are even have higher vaccination rates than we do. If we had extrapolated that 55,000 to the United States based on population, that would have been about 225,000 cases a day in the US. They're ahead of us by 6 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. We surely have every reason to believe right now we're going to see what's happened in England, what's happened in the Netherlands, what's happened in other highly vaccinated countries here over the course of the next several months.
And England just opened up.
Freedom Day today is probably the most counterproductive, absolutely inane step that anybody could take. It was on the books. They had it planned already, so they weren't going to back down. As you know, their prime minister is in quarantine right now. Their health secretary has been infected. You're watching what it's doing this morning in the Olympics. Here we are watching new people literally almost by the hour become documented as having been infected or in quarantine. So I think, we are in a very difficult state right now with this pandemic. The good news is we do have effective vaccines. The bad news is we don't have them for the world. And even when we do have them, we have a sizable number of people who refuse to get them.
So when we say infected, right? I mean, if you are vaccinated, the chances of you going into the hospital and dying seem to be incredibly low. Is that correct?
Well, let me put one qualifier on. It's incredibly, incredibly low if you're not an elderly person or possibly certain immune deficiency conditions, okay? If you're someone who is elderly, who might be in long-term care, frail, it still is highly protective, but not as good. So where we've seen the real serious illnesses and the deaths have been in vaccine recipients have been primarily in that same group that we see influenza vaccine failures and deaths. But so on a whole, let me just affirm you're absolutely right. The vaccines have been really remarkable. We're still working more on understanding what the one-dose J&J vaccine does. I think we'll be getting more updates on that in the near term. But at least with the mRNA vaccines, it's been remarkable.
Is there any difference between that is discernible in that regard in terms of Moderna and Pfizer when we talk about those vaccines in terms of infection rate we're really basically talking about the Delta variant, right? Because to the extent that there's any breakthrough infections on the wildfire or the
wild type, right?
The wild type or the other variant, those are so small
it's Delta right now. Delta is the 1,200-pound gorilla in the corner. That's the one.
Is there any difference, or do we have enough data to tell that Moderna is slightly more effective against it, or no, we don't.
No, we don't. But to your point earlier, Sam, you raised a very good point about what do we know about Delta. These variants, again, remember, are just mutated viruses that, until last November, we thought that these variants among the strains of COVID were just like talking about the same car, except one's blue, one's red, one's green, one's yellow. It really didn't make any difference how they ran or how they felt. Well, in November, we realized, wait a minute, there are 3 buckets here of concern about these variants that are really important. One, are they more infectious, as you pointed out? Number 2, do they cause more severe illness? And number 3, do they in fact actually have advantages to evade the immune protection from either vaccine or from natural infection? Well, with Delta, we know this is much more infectious. Alpha was the one that was really infectious. Well, this is at least 40 to 60% more infectious than Alpha was. This puts what we call the R naught or the RT, this reproductive number, how many people on average will one person infect. We were concerned at 1.5 and 2, meaning for every person, if you infected 2 people, the cases were doubling every 5 to 7 days. This one may be as high as 8. And this is a very certain level. Now, to understand that, there was a paper from China that came out last week that was really a very remarkable piece of work where they followed people very closely after exposure to infected individuals and actually were taking throat swabs, etc., determining what their status was. They found that they actually started shedding the virus with Delta up to a day earlier than it was with other strains. But more importantly, they found up to 1,000 times the amount of virus in the throats and respiratory tract of people with Delta than the other strains. So this can explain why, somebody basically could be much more infectious and cause that transmission. So that's why today when I say, if you are someone who's not been vaccinated or you're someone who has just decided I'm done with it, this virus will find you.
Well, how connected that is that to then the unvaccinated, right? The metastasizing of the virus, the creation of new variants. I mean, I know it is connected, but how much of that is just a direct impact of lack of vaccination?
Yeah, well, Emma, that's a really important question. And I guess it's kind of a perspective piece. What I mean by that is I'm looking here at 330 million Americans with 100 million are not yet vaccinated. Surely when you get infected, every time this virus reproduces, it lends itself to new variants. It doesn't reproduce well. And many of the mistakes it makes are actually fatal to the virus or less likely to make it more harmful. But a few of them are just the opposite, which we're concerned about. But when I put the perspective of the high income countries with vaccine, and I look at, our 100 million not vaccinated compared to the 6.4 billion in the low and middle income countries, right now that's where the fight's at. That's where the whole issue of variant development is really at its worst. And so, I surely don't want to see variants develop in the United States or any other country with these vaccines, but I absolutely know the major variant pressure is going to come from low-income countries that God knows when they're going to get vaccine in the future.
That's an important point to keep in mind, and I want to circle back on those efforts, like what it's going to take in terms of the vaccination. But just to get back, the Delta replicates at a much faster rate within the body. Is that mitigated by the vaccination? And if it is mitigated by a vaccination, does it also make it harder for a vaccinated person to pass it on?
Yeah. So let me just clarify one thing, because you raised a very important point. It's not that the virus is replicating faster. It's just more of it. It starts showing up sooner. But again, not necessarily because it's in fact reproducing itself faster. It's like if a human gestation went from 9 months to 4 months, that's not what's happening, okay? You just have somebody who's putting out triplets and quadruplets and whatever, okay? And in this case, the vaccines that we have, particularly the mRNA vaccines, the AstraZeneca vaccine, all appear to do a really good job against the Delta variant if in fact you have both doses. If you have one dose, you still get protection against serious illness, hospitalization, and death, but not nearly as good as getting both doses. Again, the question still remains about how well does the single dose J&J vaccine work, and we're still trying to collect that kind of information.
Okay, and so does it make it easier? Does it make it harder to pass on?
In fact, if you prevent something from occurring, you can't pass it on. So meaning that if in fact I don't get infected, then I'm not infectious. And so that's the big piece. So you're right. This is what can help drop transmission. The more people that are vaccinated, think of it like rods in a reaction. This case, it's a virus reaction. And the more immune people we put into that reaction, the less there's going to be. And so you're right. This is what's helpful getting vaccinated.
But I'm not even talking on necessarily a population level. I'm talking in terms of if I happen to get a breakthrough infection having had 2 shots, does it diminish my versus?
Yeah, I got you.
Versus somebody who hasn't gotten shot. Am I less likely to pass it on because the nature of my infection is not as strong, because I'm not going to get hospitalized. I'm not going to go, I'm not going to get, I'm not going to die, statistically speaking.
Yeah.
Does that mean that I also have less of ability to pass it on? Is my R not lower than a non-vaccinated person's R not?
We're going to make an epidemiologist out of you yet.
I'm working on it.
I know, that's good. That's good. No, you're absolutely right. That's exactly the case, is that when we look at studies that have tried to understand how often does somebody who's fully vaccinated, once they do have a breakthrough infection, remember, a vaccine is 90-95% effective if you give millions and millions of doses. And you have lots of infections, you're still going to get some people who have breakthroughs. But in this case, it is actually exactly as you said. It actually does reduce dramatically your ability to transmit it on if you should have a breakthrough infection.
Okay, so that's good, because many of us have young children who can't be vaccinated, and
Absolutely.
The last thing you want to do is give your kid COVID.
That's right.
And young kids with the Delta variant, do we know that are they more likely to get hospitalized than they were with the wild type if they do get infected?
Well, you hit on this point earlier, and I didn't really address it about, are we seeing more severe illness with Delta? And it's really unclear at this point. Clearly, we're seeing very ill people, but at a somewhat lower rate than we did before. And why is that? Because the most severe cases were in those 60, 65 years of age and older. And that's the group we've really vaccinated. As much as we have holes in vaccination, that's the one area we've done better. Now, we're still far below what they've done in England, but that gives you some sense. So to go back to kids, though, one of the challenges we have right now, and this is where I have a bone to pick with the CDC about the report that they put out several weeks ago, indicating that, in fact, there was limited transmission to and by kids in the school setting, and you could probably be as close as 3 feet apart. There's a real problem with that report, and that is almost all the data collected and used in that came from the first 8 months of the pandemic. During that time, that was true. We didn't see really very efficient transmission to and by kids. We didn't see nearly as many severe illnesses in those kids. But once the Alpha variant first arose, that B117 last January, things began to change dramatically. Now with Delta, I mean, you've been watching the news and seeing all these camp outbreaks that are occurring right now. We are seeing kids getting infected, transmitting the virus, and being hospitalized. Fortunately, it's still less than we see for adults, but it is still a problem. The other thing that's turning out to be a challenge is that we're seeing potentially up to 20% of kids going on and developing this long COVID condition, which is a real concern.
That is one of the questions that was asked. If I am a vaccinated person, and obviously we're seeing 20% of kids who are infected having long COVID symptoms is very scary, I think. If you are vaccinated and you are infected, do we have any data yet on your, because I've actually known some people, or, first or second hand who have gotten infected and with the vaccine, and they don't go to the hospital. They it was like sort of like having the flu for a couple of days. It wasn't pleasant, but it wasn't. But how much more of a propensity do you have to get long COVID, be a long hauler, as they call it, if you are vaccinated with the Delta? Do we have enough data on that?
We don't really have enough data. But again, what we are looking at is you surely have less severe symptoms, and the number of different signs and symptoms you have is less. And that has been correlated with the likelihood of getting long COVID. So, we need to get more information on that. But right now, what information we do have would support that the vaccines do reduce the number of people also who, if they do have breakthroughs, go on and develop long COVID.
I imagine saying the name Alex Berenson is probably one of the most offensive things I could say to you. But he was just on Tucker Carlson last night saying masks are ineffective and they're largely symbolic. A, is that true? B, is there value wearing a mask? If I'm vaccinated and I'm going to go into like the hardware store, I understand it. It may be put aside, like it puts people at rest, or it signals that I'm taking it seriously. But is that just like one more piece of Swiss cheese that I'm putting in front of my face, essentially, that says, like, you know what? I could actually mitigate the viral load I get, and being vaccinated, I could actually prevent myself from even a breakthrough infection.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Well, this is not a simple one-word answer, and that's what everybody wants today. They don't want nuance. They want either yes or no. Are you for it or are you against it? And I think what we've done is a very poor job of educating the public about how to use cloth face coverings, for example, which people label as masks. Masks are all very different from that piece of cloth that fits over your face, if you even include it over your nose, all the way to what we call N95 respirators, or actual masks that most people call, but are very, very different in their effectiveness and how they work. And, there's a group, ACGIH, which is a group that was originally government industrial hygienists, have now opened up to all comers industrial hygiene. These are the people who really have the expertise to look at how does respiratory protection work? What are the devices? These are the people that are constantly learning about that. And they've actually put out data based on the CDC's original estimate that you could get infected within 15 minutes of being in a room. So imagine, instead of a virus excreting somebody, imagine you walk in a room and somebody's smoking, because that's an aerosol. That's what creates these very fine particles that float in the air. So if you can breathe that air in and smell that smoke, then you're also, if that were an infected person, you'd be basically getting a dose. Well, CDC has determined that after about 15 minutes, that's enough time for the concentration of virus in the air to inhale it in to get what we call an infectious dose, okay? The group that I just referred to, this ACGIH, have actually put out a document, the time to infectious dose for someone not infected with COVID or someone infected with COVID. If I'm in a room, and as I pointed out, 15 minutes, I'm done, okay? If I'm in a room and I put a face cloth covering on, just a loose face cloth covering, I'm basically infected within 20 additional minutes. If I have a surgical mask on, I get 30 additional minutes. If I have an N95 respirator on, I can get up to 25 hours of protection. And so one of the challenges we've had is we've done a very poor job of educating the public. And there was at one time when these N95 respirators, you can get at any hardware store today, et cetera, were in short supply for our healthcare. Today, that's not the case. So when I talk about masks, I hate that term because it's like talking about broadcasters. And we all know, Sam, there are a lot of broadcasters just not up to you. They're just not up to snuff, right?
Don't pat his ego, please.
Emma, you too. Okay. So anyway, but the bottom line is that, we've been doing a survey at our center where we actually freeze frames of news media coverage of public events. Go look at who's wearing a mask. Up to 25% of them wear it underneath their nose. That's like fixing 3 of the 5 screen doors in your submarine. Okay. Right. I mean, what good is that? And so one of the challenges is if I have an N95 respirator on, I get some real protection, okay? If I just call it a mask and slap a piece of cloth on my face, I still get, another 20 minutes of protection in that environment. But if I'm there all day, I still get infected. And so our job has to be to educate the public. Don't just call it a mask or a mask mandate. Get the highest quality protection you can. And to me, that's why I still recommend them. It's like a seatbelt. If you're only getting a waist round seat belt, what protection do you get? You get some, fly out of the car. But if I have a complete harness strap, I have a collapsible body, I have airbags, I have shard glass that doesn't cause the sharpness to occur. I've got a computer on board that slows down my vehicle before I hit whatever I'm going to hit. Those all combined make for a much safer environment. So I look at masks like vaccines itself, they're a combination. And the one thing that it does, just like a vaccine, you can keep from getting infected, you also, if you are infected and not knowing it, it'll reduce the amount of virus you put out. But please don't count on it to be the be all end all. The only thing we have right now is vaccines that do that.
And talking about not counting on something to be a be-all, end-all, but I'm just curious about if there was any development in this research about blood type and the propensity to get COVID. I saw that there was some research happening. Is there anything more conclusive or trending in any direction in that area?
Early on, blood type came up several times. We've not seen anything since that time that really has developed into what I would call a firm understanding of someone's at more at risk. What we're finding with time is it's just a function. If you're there, you'll get it. I've heard from so many people over and over again over the last 18 months, if you just did what they did in Sweden, or you just did what they did in India, or you just did what they did in X and Y, I've heard over and over again with Vietnam and so forth, where for months, we saw very few cases. And then all of a sudden, look what happened. It blew up. And what this virus is doing is it's just basically making the rounds of the earth. And some places get hit multiple times, some places don't. I don't know why India went almost 8 months with almost no activity and then became the hottest place on the earth. That's been a challenge for us to understand. I don't understand why last spring, when this B117 or Alpha variant, we call it now, landed in the United States, it didn't do what it was doing around the world. It just hit Minnesota and Michigan. Now look what's happening. Delta is hitting everywhere. So it really isn't a function as much of the host in terms of you get it or not. If you have underlying health conditions, if you're older, if you're obese or heavier, these are all risk factors for getting severe disease, but not necessarily getting disease.
Speaking of risk factors, and then I want to ask about that sort of like the lack of predictability associated with this, but in terms of risk factors, what do we now know in terms of like risk? Like initially, I think asthma, people were very concerned about asthma, but as we went on, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, asthma wasn't ended up being associated with a higher propensity. But what about diabetes seems to be very problematic, and correct me where I'm wrong here.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yep.
What about Downs syndrome? Do we know if that is more associated with?
At this point, we don't have any evidence that is more associated, but you're right. And we're learning more about these. A lot of these are interacting factors. And what I mean by that is if I'm older, if I'm heavier and I have a condition, does that even put me at greater risk than if I'm younger and don't have a weight issue and then I have a condition? One of the challenges we have, of course, is one ages, one's immune system become less effective, or in some cases they're out of whack, and so you have to take medication to actually reduce your immune response, like certain kinds of arthritis, etc., which then in turn can dumb down the immune response in a positive way for your condition, but in a negative way if you get exposed to COVID. And so that's the challenge we have right now, is trying to deal with all that. But I can tell you right now, the major risk factors are age and obesity and immune compromised, immune deficient status. Those are the three primary drivers.
Okay. And so let's talk about this notion of, it seems to me that to a certain extent, people have been modeling how the pandemic is going to go by looking at 1918. And, but it's starting to feel like we're now outside of what we could learn from 1918, right? I mean,
yep.
Why wasn't, right now it seems to me that it's quite possible, because I'm hearing about Delta Plus in Israel, which is a subset, and maybe you know something about that you can share with us. But it does feel like this concept of, when we have 2% of the world vaccinated, this concept of like, it's going to keep going and there's going to be more variants, like this could last for, it feels like years. And why didn't that happen with 1918? Was it just by chance? And B, what can you tell us about this Delta Plus?
Well, first of all, when you look at the concept of a pandemic, remember that's a worldwide epidemic, basically occurring everywhere. That's why when people say the pandemic's done in the United States, whoa, wait a minute, it's a worldwide epidemic and it's occurring everywhere and even still here. And as soon as we forget about it, it comes back here. But I think the important point is that a coronavirus, the cause of COVID-19, is just different than a flu virus. And we've really never had a coronavirus pandemic that we've ever been aware of, even in history. Everything we can trace back even well before we had the ability to test for viruses and know had the look, feel, and smell of influenza, meaning that it emerge any time of the year, would go through various surges. Some were worse than others. 1918, it was the second one that was worse. In some locations, it was a later one that was worse. But within 2 years, the 1918 flu virus settled into becoming a seasonal flu virus. Just like what happened in 1957, 1968, and remember you can call in 2009. That virus first emerged H1N1 in Mexico in March, April, caused a peak here in March, April time period around the world, smaller, and then it caused a great big peak in cases in late August, September, and early October. It went away before we even had vaccine. And then eventually it morphed into seasonal flu. So right now, when we have seasonal influenza, you're often getting infected by the ancestral lineage of the 2009 pandemic strain. With this coronavirus, we don't see that yet. What has happened is it just keeps burning and burning and burning. It has not had any evidence of seasonality. Look what's happening again right now. I mean, last summer, our big peak in July in this country was the southern states driven by this. And then we had another peak again in January, again driven by the southern states. Here it is now, July, the southern states again. That's not seasonal, So I think that at this point, we just don't know enough. 6 weeks ago, the two hottest spots in the earth, one was Nepal, Pakistan, and India. The other one was Uruguay, Paraguay, and Argentina. They have one thing in common. They're both at 30 degrees latitude. The difference is one's north and one's south. That's not seasonality. So I think to answer it for you, we haven't seen this become a flu-like virus yet, and I don't think we're going to.
Yeah, and I just wanted to, I know you have to go soon, quickly ask about the likelihood of booster shots. I know Pfizer's obviously pushing for it. They have a financial incentive for that. But would that make any sense in terms of curbing something like the Delta variant that's more infectious?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, this week, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, an advisory group to the CDC, is taking up this very issue. And one of the things we have to look at, and the Israeli data actually gave us some hint that particularly among the older population, there may be some waning immunity. It isn't as effective, and you may need a third dose. But we're not there yet. But don't be surprised if we end up getting booster doses. Again, this is a bit of a troubling situation for me, because every time we take one of those doses and use it in a high-income country, we're taking it away from a low-income country from having any vaccine at all, because there's just a limited amount that can be produced. I'm not so worried about the companies making money on this vaccine, because this is one where if they could make all the vaccine in the world, they still couldn't, we wouldn't have enough. So it's in a sense a way of saying that, yes, they will make money on it, but it's not as if they're trying to corner a market. We will not have enough vaccine for years to come.
Anything that you feel that we should know before you go? I know you have a heart out here, but
yeah, no, I think thank you for the opportunity to talk about these issues. I just think we have to do a much better job sharing this kind of information with the public. There's a lot of people in the public that are convinced this pandemic's done. It's over with. And they don't understand it's not over with us. And I think that's the challenge we have, is how do we get through it? What are we going to do in the fall with school open? We're not going to have vaccines for kids yet. What does that mean relative to what we're finding with this new enhanced transmission in kids? How can we have these discussions without it becoming political, without it becoming angry, and just say, we're trying to just share the best science we have. We're not going to have all the information, and how do we move forward? And so, I appreciate the opportunity for venues like this, where it's really very frank and very, hard questioning, but it's also just the facts. Let's stick with the facts.
And so in terms of that school, the only thing that we can do for the kids now, because they can't get vaccinated, is to make sure that as many people around them are vaccinated.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. That's exactly, and that's not a political statement. That's just reality, So anyway.
Dr. Michael Osterholm, thank you so much for your time.
Always good to talk to you. Thank you,
really
guys.
Appreciate it.
Take you later. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
There you have it, folks. We're going to take a quick break. I could have kept him for an hour or two, but he's one of the premier epidemiologists in the world and probably has other people to talk to.
Right.
But really just appreciate it. Obviously, I didn't get to all of the questions that people had, but I think we hit enough of some of the basic building blocks. There are no yes or no answers to this, right? I mean, like, someone writes, can a vaccinated individual who's contracted COVID transmit the virus to others? The answer is yes, but it is less effective than to unvaccinated people because the vaccination diminishes your viral load. And that is why you don't get as sick. And it's also that principle. The more sick that you get from COVID is generally a function of how much it grows in your body, because maybe you lack you lack immunity, or in the age that was also associated with that. Maybe there's some other element, but in the main, vaccinated people transmit it, even if they get infected, less than non-vaccinated people. But again, this is also on a population level. For any given individual, is that necessarily hold? Not necessarily. All of this, protecting yourselves, your family, all of it is basically, an odds thing. And this dynamic has not changed since the very beginning of the pandemic. If I stay at home and see no people ever, I'm not going to get COVID. If I let one person in, I have a little bit more chance of getting COVID. If that one person happens to work in a bar and is going out at a bar every night and nobody's wearing it, then it goes up a little bit. I mean, it's just a matter of risk factors here. And at one point, and everybody wants to know, like, well, at what point have I crossed the Rubicon? At what point have I crossed into I'm accepting too much risk and not enough risk? And on some level, that has to be addressed by the individual. But there are certain broad lines, essentially, that are the risk reward situation does not make sense. And that is, not getting vaccinated doesn't make sense. Unless you have a very specific and clear sort of problem, like physical reaction to vaccines. The idea of being hesitant at that point, just that, particularly now, seems absurd. And the amount of risk that you are assuming by not getting vaccinated, and the risk that you're providing for others. It's basically like, for the unvaccinated, we're back at day one, except for COVID has now 4 times the ability to transmit than it did at the beginning. And none of this is like, I remember talking to David Wallace Wells in February, and he said in January, they had 27 models, I believe it was, the CDC had done in terms of what was going to happen with COVID. And he said 2 of them said it would go down. 25 of them said it would go up. And it went down. The infections went down from January to February in this country. They went down fairly dramatically. And he's like, we just don't know. There's just like, this is all new territory. And I can only imagine, like, to be like a guy like Osterholm and watching entire industries make money and entities make money off of the idea that we're going to play with that lack of data and the novelty of this by demonizing the people who are trying to figure it out. Man, that is just beyond reprehensible.
I thought it was an important point too about where the new variants are coming from, because I do think that we have a tendency, and I agree, like Fox News has blood on their hands with the way that they're handling this thing, but Iran has on their 5th wave, and they're still under sanctions by us. Like, that is criminal, like, on a mass level.
And when you contemplate the idea, like, I mean, right now, it's supposedly Merkel is the impediment to getting vaccine out there. But we should be building vaccination production facilities all around the world right now. And we should then, I don't care what you got to do, U.S. government, you want to call it a taking? Fine. We will take the as much of that technology, the patents, the technological know-how, and we will take all of it, and we will distribute it around the world. And we'll take your personnel, and everybody will get paid. But we need to get the world vaccinated.
If we can put bases around the world, we should be able to vaccinate people.
We should use the bases. Yeah. I mean, where could we find 800 bases? Like, sort of like bases. We had 800 bases around the world. We think of them as like vaccination bases. God, that would be so hard to build 800 bases. And then just coincidentally, we have them. All right, look, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more. All right, let's come back. We are back. We got this Kilmeade clip from Fox and Friends. We'll get to that, but we need to pair it with Meghan McCain's protestation.
Yes.
That nobody on Fox, particularly on the. So we'll get to that one. Let's just go to Ron DeSantis, who is doing his best, sort of Donald Trump, with like, look, it's here one day, then it just goes away.
Like
we have
magic.
No agency. There's nothing we can do. Testing is only to basically take stock. And what's sometimes better is better not to take stock.
Yeah, testing causes more cases.
Why would you want more cases to be aware of it?
COVID's only in the context of my PR campaign.
Exactly. Here's Ron DeSantis. This is just nuts. We know, and Florida is at its peak, right? I mean, Florida has never had this many cases.
Hey, don't Fauci my Florida.
Exactly.
Jesus.
Let me Fauci your Florida here.
What a Fauci buzzkill.
I should have worked out a couple of those, but this is really stunning. Here's Ron DeSantis on the rising COVID infection rate in Florida.
These things have a pattern. We saw the pattern last summer. It's similar. I think it started a little later. And so people should just be prepared for that. And as we get into the next month, August and stuff, I think you'll start to see it go in a different direction. But that's just the way this thing is done. It's had a pretty consistent life cycle. And there's certain parts of the country that have certain seasonal. And so this is it.
Yeah. Now, we just spoke to one of the top epidemiologists in the country, if not the world, who said the thing that we're starting to realize about this is that it doesn't have a pattern. That unlike the flu, this is not seasonal. We have peaks at the same longitudes at the same time, but one is, winter, one is summer.
Right.
We have This is, yes, the O'Reilly tides go in, tides go out.
You can't explain it.
Yeah, this is different. And so.
But what's unique about America is that, we are lagging in our vaccinations, as Canada, as we were talking about before the show, was completely behind, and now they're about to surpass us. And part of that is due to, one, yes, misinformation by people on Fox News and people like Ron DeSantis, but also the fact that the United States healthcare system is so gross and people are so skeptical of it that they are hesitant to take vaccines. Sometimes people think that they're going to be charged. Sometimes people think it's going to be ineffective or hurt them based on the history of how we've treated black people in this country medically. So the exploitation of that by Republican politicians and conservative pundits has different layers of horror than just, going after anti-vaxxers.
Exactly. All right, folks, if you're watching us on Peacock, we say adieu to you, which means goodbye in French, apparently. And
learn something new every day.
There you go. And we'll be back tomorrow, and maybe we'll do it in a different language. If you are sticking around, welcome.
Hello.
We just, I forgot to mention that we changed the hours on, well, we didn't change the hours. The hours were changed on us.
On Peacock.
On Peacock. On the choice from MSNBC on Peacock. That's the official name of the channel. We got bumped for...
It's not the Sam Seder choice?
The Sam Seder choice. Oh. The Sam Seder alternative. We got bumped for the... they do like a highlight reel of MSNBC. So...
Oh.
I think, I'm happy. This show is on at 11 p.m. at night, and that we're more of an 11 p.m. show. That's what I always said. Like, if I ever did, people have said to me, you should do a show on MSNBC. And I was like, I wouldn't really want to do one except maybe an 11 p.m. show on a Friday night.
You want to get into the Gutfeld territory?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they have...
Is that still going on?
Gutfeld is still happening. I think it's a very popular show. Oh, really? Yeah, I think it's doing like wildly well.
That's
I need to check in on that. I
really,
haven't seen it
really
Yeah,
depressing.
no, we got to check it out. Folks, just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only support the free show, you get the fun half, and you get the free show without commercials. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. It is your membership that makes this show possible. I wanted to show the Kowalski shirt. We got some great shirts.
I have it.
Well, we'll show it in the fun half. Folks can check that out. Tomorrow on the program.
A preview, though. It's gray.
Yeah. Tomorrow on the program, as I'm sure many of you know, tomorrow marks the 1-year anniversary of Michael Brooks's passing away. And we're going to more or less do the first half as usual. We're going to play a clip of Michael at the top of the show, though. And we're going to do our interview, and then we're going to basically open up the phone lines in the second hour. For the next, for the 90 minutes, and just have people call in, briefly talk about, what they remember about Michael. We may play a couple of clips, but that's it. That's what we're planning for tomorrow. And of course, we will also give you information about other tributes to Michael that are happening online as well. So just a heads up on that. Want to also remind you that No McKee's show on now Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can check that out in the evenings. YouTube.com/The No McKee Show. And Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian media universe?
Yeah, for members of Left Reckoning, patreon.com/Left Reckoning, we talked to Andrew Hartman, a Marxist professor and historian, about the culture war since World War II. So you can check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning, available right now.
Okay, folks, see you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
sent us this.
Alpha males are back. Boy, back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy, back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them, just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males...
Psych. Fuck them. Snowflake says what?
What?
Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. It is the fun half, ladies and gentlemen, as you can hear. From the IM, Chowder with Crowder. Osterholm, always a great guest, but have you considered having some moms who run Facebook groups on so we can hear both sides of this vaccine business?
It's only fair and balanced if you hear both sides.
Yep, there it is. Also, I should tell you, I have been informed by our Majority Report linguistic expert, at least in the French division, that adieu probably not the appropriate sign-off. That is for a long goodbye.
Because you're commending them to God, right?
Oh.
It's basically, yes, I'm not going to see you for a long time. So, God be with you, I guess, would be the etymology of that. It really, we need au revoir, which means until next time, which of course is exactly the point. There will be a next time. We'll be here tomorrow, and then so on and so on. So.
Right. Should I show this Kowalski shirt here?
Yes, and now we will. Here is the Kowalski Family Farms Inc. I got a large, and I think large in Nebraska is a little bit different than large.
Yeah, this is an. I got an extra
North.
large, right? This is an XXL.
Yeah,
It feels like.
I feel like all the stuff goes up.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that in the Midwest.
Yeah.
I like how there's a. I mean, this is grain, right? Not a palm tree.
That's corn, I think.
That's corn.
I'm not a farmer.
Have you not seen big cornfields?
I have, but like, not. I mean, I live in Brooklyn, so not that recently.
Okay.
Have any of you been in like a cornfield, like in the sort of like a maze, like in the stalks and stuff like that? It's awesome.
Unbelievable. And particularly when those stalks can get like 6, 8 feet.
Yeah, 8, 9 feet.
9 feet tall.
Like at an old kind of, I think at a Halloween thing, they would have corn mazes and stuff, right? That's stuff that
corn may still be up there.
But it's even cool when it's like a maze when it's not even made like
it's a little bit scary, actually, when you're in there.
Signs.
Well, because of how uniform the rows are, you can see down them.
Yes, yeah.
Cool.
All right, let's come on. Now, Meghan McCain, she's doing basically, this is what Brendan's doing too. Saying that he's leaving
before he bids adieu.
Yeah,
right.
I'm often reminded of Brendan when Meghan McCain speaks.
Well, Brendan and Meghan both said, I'm leaving. And then they stuck around for a couple of weeks to get their accolades and their last comments in. And so here's Meghan McCain pulling her Brendan.
Doing an A-Rod kind of goodbye.
Yeah, for bad takes.
Jeter.
For bad takes.
Baseball's not my.
And here is Meghan McCain. Where's this whole notion that Fox is putting out this information? Where is that coming from?
Us who have done everything we've been asked to do since the beginning. And it's just terrible all the way around. I wish we could all come together on it. But I was watching Fox and Friends this morning. Steve Doocy said, get the vaccine. Fox and Friends is like the mothership of MAGA media. And if someone like Steve Doocy is imploring people to get the vaccine, I think that's effective. And not everybody on Fox News is saying don't get the vaccine. I actually haven't heard anyone say that, but maybe I'm just misinformed.
Maybe not. Maybe they haven't said it out loud because, as we know now, the former president and his wife got the vaccination when they left office. I mean, there are things.
Hear Whoopi here. Okay, so let's just test this. Now, we played last night a clip, and really the mothership of MAGA, I would say, is probably Tucker Carlson. He's the highest rated on the show. It's prime time. Reaching multitudes more than Fox and Friends.
And this is the same argument he's made, by the way. I haven't explicitly said don't get the vaccine. I just have questions. Like the Supreme Court, if the law doesn't say I'm a racist law, it can't be a racist law.
Exactly. Now, Berenson on there, who has been featured on this, said masks don't work at all. Don't work at all, which we've just heard from the top epidemiologist in the country. Point blank, said on this program, yes, they do. They have different levels of efficacy depending on what kind of material they're made out of. But yes, masks do work.
Berenson just says it's just like a vehicle for liberals to, make people feel comfortable.
The idea that the vaccine is getting less effective, it's not getting less effective. The vaccine has different efficacy depending on the strain in which it is dealing with. But it is still incredibly, almost amazingly effective at saving your life if you get COVID. I mean, beyond, I think, anybody's wildest dream 6 to 8 months ago. Then she cites Steve Doocy. Steve Doocy today said get the vaccine on Fox and Friends. But they're friends. It's not Fox and Friend. It's Fox and Friends. What are the other friends saying after he says, get the vaccine, it's important? Is there something that's going to diminish that call to action?
But listen, if you didn't get a vaccination, that's your choice. And if you did, like I did, and they did, and maybe you did, then you should not wear a mask. And if you didn't, if you want to go cliff diving this weekend, you don't have to check with me. It seems a little dangerous, but I'm not going to judge you. And if you go ahead and put yourself in danger, if you feel as though this is not something for you, don't do it. But don't affect my life. 99%.
Pause it. Hold on. I'm sorry. Pause it really quickly. But don't affect my life. Going cliff diving is a personal choice. If you decide to go cliff diving and that was a contagious decision, and so like an old person who couldn't really jump that far and might hit the rocks on their way down was then hypnotized and compelled to do it too, then maybe that would be analogous.
Well, the analogy would be this, like if you're going cliff diving, and incidentally I have a very long rope, and I'm going to tie that rope to the ankles of some random kids and old people, and then I'm going to jump. And maybe it'll drag him in, maybe it won't.
Maybe they'll ricochet and hit a tree on the way down, but that's fine. Choice, personal choice.
Before we go back to it, like, I'm not going to judge you. Like, just comment on it and make a judgment. Like, being judged is not throwing someone in jail.
Well,
no, but
also,
they don't do judgments on Fox and
yes,
Friends. They
you never hear
make
Brian Kilmeade will
yeah.
never judge anybody else's behavior, right? He's never judged anybody's behavior.
It's
impossible to imagine Brian Kilmeade judging the behavior of someone else, a parent or a politician or, individuals, or, the way that people are wearing their pants, or, whatever. You would never find Brian Kilmeade judging anybody about anything. And the idea that you're going to say this too, that it's like what you're doing is not in any way implicating others, is also a lie. It's also a lie. You just heard the top epidemiologist, one of the top in the country, say the only way we have to protect kids under the age of 12, if they don't get, because we don't have a vaccine for them, is to make sure that as many people around them as possible are vaccinated.
But what about, they always say they care about the children, so.
But let's hear Ducey. Come on, this is what nobody's going to listen to Kilmeade. It's just all Ducey.
If you go ahead and put yourself in danger, if you feel as though this is not something for you, don't do it. But don't affect my life.
99% of the people who are dying from COVID are unvaccinated.
That's their choice.
They don't want to die. So they are. The administration and the government is saying we need the mask mandate to protect the unvaccinated.
That's not their job. It's not their job to protect anybody.
Whoa, wait a second. Hold it. Now, first off, it is very easy to find stories of people in the hospital with COVID, dying of COVID, going like, I didn't think this was real. And God knows where they could have possibly got that impression from. But put that aside for a moment. It's not the responsibility of the United States to protect its citizens.
Damn, is that Kilmeade endorsing defund the police?
I mean, let's just look at this on a federal level.
No more cops. Abolish the police. I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't we have, like, what was that thing? What am I thinking of? It's the, God, what do you call that? That Constitution, right? The Constitution of the United States, starting off, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility. I mean, just even like they're supposed to ensure domestic tranquility. Pandemic seems a little bit less than tranquil. Provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. You're not too free when you're dead. Like the idea that it's not the responsibility of the U.S. government to do this. Why was it the responsibility of the U.S. government to do Operation Warp Speed?
Or to say, invade Iraq and Afghanistan. I thought that was protecting our freedoms, right?
Well,
these are government functions that Kilmeade was all in favor of.
Kilmeade will say
to help, provide.
It's a classic libertarian perspective. Say like we should only have a government that's going to provide an army. Okay, fine. Well, how about you don't avail yourself of the vaccine that was developed in warp speed by the governmental program Warp Speed? Or how about you also don't avail yourself of any of the technology that's happened, medical technology by the government? Like, I mean, honestly, like, how far do you want to carry this, bud?
Like, governmental power in this country, one of the ways that it sort of developed was like things like smallpox vaccination efforts and things like that. Like, one of the most timeless roles of government is protecting from pandemics.
Should the CDC not gotten involved in this pandemic thing at all? I mean, should we have just waited for your own private doctor to go like, hey, I'm talking to people at a conference I went to in Florida, and half the people died, incidentally, who went to the conference. But I survived, and I'm getting whiff of this pandemic thing, Brian. So I am waiting now for a company to, on its own, assess this, and maybe come up with a vaccine. In the meantime, I don't know if I would go into work. What? Oh, they're going to make you come into work? Why? God, I wish we had some type of like broad authority that could give us a sense of what's going on here with this pandemic. Too bad we wouldn't want government to interfere with that type of thing.
Well, I mean, it sounds like Kilmeade must have watched your debate with Yaron Brook and kind of took some
I was
notes.
going to say, yeah, Yaron Brook should sue for plagiarism. This is
Right.
intellectual property.
Exactly.
It's your choice.
He must
Exactly.
be reading media.
Oh, right. Yeah. Wow. That's pretty good. But remember now, they're not promoting any anti-vax stuff, right? Like it's the subtext of this. You cannot trust the government. The government has no business telling me what I should or should not do. And remember, this is where they've had to, this is their retreat, right? For a long time, they were out there going like, the government cannot mandate this. And now it's like the government cannot suggest this.
It's so weird when they're all vaxxed too. Like that psychology is very bizarre to
Because they're just performing for a certain subset.
Exactly.
They're just performing for this subset.
Exactly.
And right. I mean, now it's like, yeah, the government cannot mandate this. Vaccine passports, how outrageous. And when it's like perfectly clear the government is not mandating it, yeah, but it feels like a mandate, right? And then it all goes back to, okay, this is just resentment of liberal culture where everybody on the left, on the coast says you should get vaccinated, and don't you want to stick it to them? Because it feels like they're making you, but they're not actually making you, right? That's what it is.
Here is Joe Biden getting out there talking about Facebook. The social media platform is killing people. And here's the, there's two questions, really, it seems to me, about this. One is he accurate? That's the first question. The second question is, what are we going to do about it? And here's Joe Biden.
On COVID misinformation, what's your message to platforms like Facebook?
They're killing people. I mean, look, the only pandemic we have is among the unvaccinated. And they're killing people.
I mean, it's hard to argue with that. There's a lot of misinformation going out there. The country is very vulnerable to it. There's a ton of misinformation that is being, generated. Facebook, YouTube, these platforms do not care about anything other than growth, particularly Facebook. And I don't like the idea of government censoring these social media platforms. That I don't think is a proper use of government to censor those. Then I think you really do start to run afoul of the First Amendment. And then the question is, well, how do you respond to this? And this is the thing that people need to be really clear about. There are a lot of so-called civil libertarians out there who are bemoaning all the dark forces that are censoring this person or that person, and they're doing this because they're disgusting Democrats or whatever it is.
CIA liberal.
Woke CIA,
Nexus.
Right, yeah.
When you listen to that, tell me what is the solution they are offering? It is nothing. It is nothing. There is no solution they're offering, and that is by design, incidentally. Because they are using this dynamic, even if they're correct in their assessment, which I don't know if that they are or not. They're using it simply to demonize. They're offering no solution because they have none. Or I should say, they have none that's consistent with their ideology. Their ideology is very much a neoliberal free market ideology. All they are complaining about are the players within that marketplace who have coercive power, and they're not even arguing that there should be anything to be done with it other than demonize these people. We need to break Facebook up into as many pieces as it makes it not profitable for them to allow this misinformation to function on their platform. And that may mean that you have a less efficient way of getting in touch with that person you went to second grade with. But it is, if there is no better example of what society cannot deal with than this type of social media, we need to break it up based upon existing antitrust laws. We need to separate their advertising functions, their chatting functions, their posting functions. There needs to be separate entities so that they do not make such a huge profit off of this misinformation, when there's certainly ways to do it, and it's going to become less profitable for them to do this. And there's going to be more value in having human moderators, and they're going to be, and you can go, if you want this stuff, it's going to be out there, just like, Alex Jones still exists. You can consume his content, but it is sequestered, and it doesn't have the imprimatur of being on Facebook and leveling the playing field with, like, here's this top epidemiologist. Here's this mom who puts crystals, under her arms to ward off COVID. Which one do I listen to? I don't know. They're both there.
Well, because the algorithm essentially, no matter how Facebook testifies to congressional committees and says they're going to tweak their algorithm in whatever way to be less white supremacy, right? It's always, if a company is that large, going to trend towards reactionary content and always going to be the most outrageous thing because that's the most clickable thing.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, like, I think if people weren't following politics before Twitter and Facebook, you didn't have a sense of how significant conservative email forward culture was. Yeah. And basically all these platforms have monetized that. Like, that's why Bongino and Shapiro, because those brain types, or I mean, not to get like brain type, but like the pattern of ideology is just really good for sharing propaganda. And that's,
that all caps, email you'd get from your crazy uncle that had 3 Drudge Report links. Now that's just what this is, except it's more shareable and it's more intoxicating to people who are seeing it online. And it's a function of the behemoth that is Facebook, as you say, Sam. So all of these aesthetic critiques by people who, want to just kind of capitalize on resentment towards coastal elites. I said this in the last segment too. Know that's all that is. If we're not talking about antitrust, and Biden, though, being honest there about, yes, they're killing people, that's good to say that. If he's also not pairing that with an antitrust path forward, then it's meaningless as well. Luckily, Lena Khan seems to be really having some players that be, players shaking in their boots. I mix up powers that be. So hopefully there's some action that can be taken, but it has to be like, one shot and kill kind of situation. You have to take your shot and be smart with it with Facebook.
You guys mentioned the emails. Prior to that, it was faxes. I mean, it was faxes, and you can see the difference. The efficiency makes a difference. The efficiency and the power and the centralization of Facebook makes a qualitative, not just a quantitative difference. And it is a different thing, and we should destroy it. Period. End of story.
And it's not like it'd be difficult. Like, Facebook is already a conglomeration of a whole bunch of different stuff that they just bought.
Yep.
And you could just spin all that stuff off and then, yeah, like take an X to the advertise and stuff.
Yep. But you will not hear that. And I there may be other ways in which to deal with this. I'm not aware of them, but you will not hear that from those people who are decrying the censoring.
No, they're minimizing the problem.
And here's the thing. Those people decrying those people decrying the censorship, and it's going to come for you too, man. Yeah, because you're not offering a mechanism in which to diminish their capacity or the value of them sicking it off of me. In fact, what you're doing is like the dogs are chasing us. And you're standing out there and you're holding somebody else's shirt and trying to give a different scent. That's the only thing they're doing. They're not going after the dogs. They're just trying to point to someone else.
And they secretly love it because you look at the Facebook pages, the top 10, it's Ben Shapiro, Daily Wire, Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, whatever, Dan Bongino. Like, Tucker Carlson in particular, he wants to have the benefits of railing against big tech without doing anything about it, as you say, and then while also secretly being like, yeah, Facebook, do your thing. It's helpful. It's a funnel system to me.
Yeah, maybe the candidates Peter Thiel's lining up behind will do something positive about it.
Oh, yeah, J.D. Vance, I'm sure. Right.
Here is, getting back to Fox. Continuing on with our Fox News is not spreading disinformation campaign about vaccines and whatnot. Here is Matt Bennett, third way guy. Don't particularly like these guys in any shape or form, but apparently he's able to sort of like articulate things like, hey, oxygen is how we breathe. And if you go underwater for too long without any apparatus to breathe, you will drown and die. That's basically the threshold in which he has to deliver certain facts. Here's Charlie Hunt from Fox News going like, what do we need a vaccine for anyways?
Matt, your thoughts.
They did it constantly. I mean, look, this is just nuts. Let's be clear. The vaccines are safe. The ICUs are filled with people who are unvaccinated. There are people still testing positive who have been vaccinated, a few. We knew that would happen because it's 90% effective, but none of them are going to the hospital. What is happening, the people who are dying, the people who are filling up our hospitals are unvaccinated, and many of them are there because people like Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida and other all Republican politicians are telling them that the vaccines might not be safe, that they shouldn't listen to public health experts like Dr. Fauci. They're selling T-shirts on DeSantis's website attacking Dr. Fauci. That is the problem. That is how misinformation gets spread, and it's very, very dangerous.
Charlie? Go ahead.
No, misinformation comes when people like you try to politicize a disease that is 99.999% survivable. That's the problem here. And when politicians and people who work for politicians choose to take something like a pandemic and turn it into a political cudgel in order to get more power, that's how people wind up being...
Okay, let's just stop. We've heard enough from just 99.999%. We have 300 million people in this country, approximately, probably a little more right now. 0.001% of those people dying would be 300,000. That presumes that every single person in the country gets it. And it was only 0.0001% fatal. Now, of course, we have double the amount of those people dead already. And we have almost 150 million people unvaccinated. So you want to double those numbers and then you're talking about like, you know, we could have like another 400,000 people die if he was even accurate. I mean, this is, and never mind long haul, 20% of kids who get COVID get long haul. I mean, these people are psychos.
We're saying this as we're like upwards of 750,000 people died in this country from this, possibly.
Right. I mean, yeah, but it's just 99.9% everybody recovers.
And just think about how this disinformation works, right? It's not like one person watches one show on Fox and they decide I'm not going to get vaccinated. It's you're absorbing all this stuff on Fox. And it's all to make you suspicious of the people who are saying get a vaccine. And then you're hearing like, well, it's almost impossible to die from this. Almost impossible.
Well, it's a debate. I mean, that's this is why from earlier the Meghan McCain argument of no one explicitly said on don't get the vaccine on Fox News, which, you know, maybe I would imagine I wouldn't put it past them if they have some sort of like memo that says you can't explicitly say this due to maybe we have some liability in this area, but dance around it as much as possible. The fact that they make it a debate is in and of itself a false equivalence that is designed to make sure people don't get vaccinated and tap into these vaccine skeptical people, which they're now seeing as, you know, their next constituency, and that it's burgeoning. So
let's go to the phones. Calling from some Skype number, so I'm not sure what the area code is. Is it 266? Who's this? Where are you calling from? 266? Are we up? Wait, why is there so many? That could be some type of all right, try this. Calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is that me?
Yes, it is you. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Sure. My name is Eric. I'm from San Antonio.
Eric from San Antonio. What's on your mind? Eric from San Antonio.
Just like, I guess, kind of a rhetorical question to start with, just something to think about. What are grassroots Democrats like fighting for? You know, aside from infrastructure, which to me is more of the establishment like agenda, you know, what are the actual grassroots Democrats fighting for? I guess that's kind of my question, because when it comes to the human infrastructure, I kind of see it as like, okay, if the corporations are not paying taxes and now families with kids are not paying taxes, it's kind of like the 18 to 65-year-olds that seem like the only ones who are actually going to pay an effective tax rate. So that's kind of where I'm iffy on.
Yeah, I don't understand really. You're breaking up a little bit, but I don't know where you're getting this 18 to 35-year-olds are going to be paying taxes.
I'm sorry, did I say 35? I meant 65.
Well, I don't know why you're talking about it in terms of age cohorts. I mean, corporations, I think there is a part of the deal is to raise corporate taxes, not as much as I would like, but they are. There are enforcement mechanisms, the IRS, and I think there's other tax. We haven't quite seen what they are, but they're going to be higher taxes on wealthy people. I personally, you know, I don't like the way that we're constructing this with like a pay-for situation, but it is, you know, partly a procedural thing. I'd like to see a wealth tax, but that's neither here nor there. In terms of like what progressives, you know, grassroots are fighting for, I mean, I think progressives would like a Medicare for all in this bill, but you've got stuff like universal pre-K, that's huge. Universal preschool, that's and universal pre-K is huge. Childcare,
I agree,
huge. Free community college. I'd like to see one option on a free 4-year college, but not quite there yet. Expansion of Medicare benefits, good. I'd like to see the age expanded too, frankly, to 60. There's also $400 billion worth of elder care. I mean, there's a ton of stuff in there that
well, I
is
agree with those things, but I guess that's where the issue lies with me is that, like I said, 18 to 65. So, you know, if you have kids, you're taken care of in the bill. If you're Medicare age 65 or older, you're taken care of. But those in the middle that don't have kids, if you're working full time, you can't necessarily just drop everything and go to a 4-year college. You still have to pay bills. So it just kind of seems to me
expansion of federal expansion of Medicaid is being worked on in those states where there aren't where the Republicans haven't allowed for that. I mean, I guess if you're 18 to 65 and you don't have any parents and you don't have any children, and you don't want to use the internet and you don't want to go on a train and you don't care about the health of people around you, and you don't want paid sick leave,
is your point, though,
then I don't know if there's something in the bill for you. There are, I think they're trying to make some of those ACA subsidies permanent too, but if you're working and you have health insurance from the, like what exactly are you looking for?
Well, you know, I'm just taking it with a grain of salt. But last thing I'll say, and then
I don't understand what that means.
Caller.
I don't understand what that means. You're taking it with a grain of salt. Like, I mean, what are you looking for in terms of a proposal?
Well, like I said, the last thing I'll say, just to move on, will be I kind of wish that the left would push the Overton window slightly more with corporations.
Well, look, don't talk to me about corporations' Overton window. Like, what are you looking for in the bill?
Well, this is what I'm gonna tie it to the bill. For instance, like the Amtrak thing. Taxes and fines on corporations is great as a pay for, but for instance, we're just gonna give Amtrak all of this free public deficit money. To expand their network. And then we're still going to have a user fee, but us as people, we get like a stimulus, meaning every other business has to go to a bank with interest. And,
it's not
that's how they carry on or expand. So wouldn't it be cool if some kind of every time a corporation got public money in any bill, all Americans got a dividend?
Amtrak is run by the U.S. government. You know that, right?
Well, I'm just saying in general, any corporation.
What do you mean in general?
It's not a private.
Amtrak is run by the U.S. government.
This isn't Walmart, right? They're not giving, they're not giving Honda a contract to build railroads, and then they'll get the private profits from it. Do you understand?
No, I definitely understand. I'm just saying any corporation that gets any type of bailout, it just seems like, they just give them the money, here goes to an airline, whichever airline should have failed.
Wait a second. Than an airline.
But you understand, there's no corporate bailouts in this bill. Are you talking about the COVID relief bill?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just in general, just, any corporation
honestly,
that receives
you're just talking gibberish
public
now.
money.
Yeah, I don't like corporate bailouts either, but that has nothing to do with the infrastructure bill.
Okay, well, thank y'all. Y'all have a good one.
Okay.
That is a very odd call. Someone new.
If deficit money is going anywhere, Amtrak's a good place for that to go.
Definitely.
Yes. I mean, that's about investing in.
Sadly, this is not deficit money.
Make it free. I would do that. And if maybe Bernie Sanders won the primary, that sort of things like this might be on the table, but a capitalist won it, and the extent that we're getting spending out of it, it's not going to be done in the way that really changes these structures. But take what you can get is my.
Yeah. I mean, I wish there was subsidy money that made Amtrak cheaper, for example, but I don't think that's what the point was.
Calling from a Skype number 266. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes. What's your name? Where are you calling from? And try and speak into your microphone without your hand over the microphone.
My name is Guy from Quebec.
Guy from Quebec. What's on your mind,
Hey,
Guy?
So I was sort of thinking about political strategy in general. So like in Canada, we have there's the Conservative Party, and then, there's the Liberals, which are somewhat socially liberal, but fiscally conservative, and the NDP, which is both fiscally and socially liberal. And similarly to the U.S., and that has the Democrats, where there's those two sort of parties exist, right? And so, in one way, when you improve people's material conditions, they tend to be more receptive to sort of more social progressive policies, and vice versa. But there's always a big portion of the population that is very reluctant to sort of move socially, either for any kinds of reasons. So sometimes I'm trying to sort of think about whether or not there's oftentimes very progressive parties or politicians are both fiscally and socially very progressive, but when you push both at the same time, you can lose a lot of people. And so, is there some...
The answer is because we have non-parliamentary system that we can't do. If you're suggesting that we should have a socially liberal, economically liberal but socially conservative.
Not necessarily socially conservative, but sort of focus on one.
In this, I understand what you're saying. And I think, that was the argument about Bernie Sanders, right? Was that he was too focused on class issues as opposed to other issues of race and social liberation. The dilemma that the Democrats have, I don't have an issue with it in practice, but the dilemma from in terms of an analysis is that they have a very, very wide group of people who support Democrats, and they do so for different reasons. And so very difficult to eliminate any one of those groups who have different priorities for these things. So, I know what you're saying, and, perhaps there could be Democrats within the coalition who bring people into the base that way. But, no, that doesn't happen in a non-parliamentary system. Appreciate the call. It's just not, Hillary Clinton tried to sort of throw over, people forget, be soften on abortion. In 2004, I think it was, and going into 2008.
Right. Wow.
Of all people. But that was her theory. No, she wasn't economically, she wasn't, doing haymakers in terms of economic progressivism. But that theory, no. Calling from an 825 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello. Hi, this is Pradeep. I'm from India too, just like the caller you had a couple weeks ago, Vern.
Yeah. Hey, Pradeep.
Yeah, Sam, I really got to say, I agree with him that it's so dishonest of you to ask us for our thoughts. When we say you're a liar, and we need irrefutable data to show the link between black on black crime and the existence of climate change, we are just being intellectual. But when you say when we say that we think welfare is partly to blame for single motherhood amongst the blacks, Jesse Waters would say, that's just us spitballing, man. That's just us brainstorming. So here in India, we use what Republicans say as a starting point for all our strategy meetings,
Okay, I'm not totally following. I think there's some sarcasm here, right? Am I picking that up correctly?
Yes, quite a bit. Sorry.
That's it.
Sarcasm's
from Alabama.
Sarcasm's hard to gauge over the phone.
Wait, you're calling from Alabama, did you say?
No. Sorry, you had a caller from Alabama.
Okay.
A while ago, kind of talking about like how in terms of like the free labor of slaves was overstated in its economic impact.
Right.
Yeah, and so I gotta say, okay, this is gonna be another time for sarcasm. Sorry, but I find him very convincing. I found it so convincing that I had to change apart. Like all the sweatshops in Calcutta, they're all gonna stop using their free labor, and you're gonna just imagine that they're gonna get like some fancy technology in 5 or 10 years, and that'll pay for all their. Even though right now they're going to lose all their profits from using like sweatshops and child labor, they're going to now miraculously, bet on like in 5 or 10 years getting like a AI-powered crypto mining sewing machine or something like that.
Right. I mean, that's the reason. That's ultimately the reason why so many jobs have left the United States. It's not so much because the labor is cheap. It is because executives like to take trips, and so.
Yeah, and so all right. So on more of a serious note, so my sister she used to practice as a doctor in India, in Kerala, and now she works as an epidemiologist at the University of Michigan Public Health Department. So in your debate with your own. When he was essentially saying stuff like, we need to read all the studies that people do, and like, to have, again, she was a doctor. My sister was a doctor as well, right? So whenever she makes a diagnosis or whatever, for me, obviously, I'm a little biased. She's my sister, but when other people go to her and hear her diagnoses, I mean. Are they supposed to, research all her financial dealings and all her clinical studies she's ever been a part of, and then see like, okay, this might be a corrupt doctor or this might be a good doctor,
Well,
so
okay. Just to defend your own here, no, of course not. That would be too hard for them. What they need to do is they need to hire a service that would do that work, and then make those assessments. Now, of course, then you have a question. Well, how do we know that there isn't a relationship between your sister and this service to check out whether that information is correct? So they also need to hire a second service to assess whether the first service is actually on the up and up. To determine whether your sister knows what's on the up and up. Of course, your sister will also have a service that assesses all of the people who come in and sell her products and give her data. And of course, she'll need a second service to assess whether the first service is doing it in a diligent and vigilant way. Now, I would also imagine that there would be a bigger service that would be in charge of looking at all the secondary services that are tasked with assessing whether the primary service is on the up and up. This tertiary service, I would imagine, would be quite large. It might have various agencies in it that would look on specific things. For instance, this tertiary service, which I'm imagining would be quite large, would assess, like one department would assess whether food safety, let's say, and then one would do like drug safety, and then maybe one would do like structural safety, and you'd have like different agencies within this third tertiary agency that has the overarching responsibility. Now, of course, you'd need to give that agency some heft and some ability to, maybe police on some level. So you might want to give them a little bit more authority. And so that's what I'm thinking probably would take place. But I get your point.
Right. And one last thing, if that's okay.
Yes, quick.
Cool. So, great interviews with Mark Joseph Stern and Ari Melberman. But no. So I was hoping to to see if you guys would share your thoughts on whether or not like the For the People Act would really be sufficient, or if we'd actually need to expand the court. So I'll take the answer off air. Thanks, everyone. Brendan, Matt, Emma, Sam, take care.
It would go a long way.
It would go a long way.
It would go a long way.
We're not going to get it.
Right. And even, okay, right. We can't even get the John Lewis Act passed, which is, a fifth of that provision. So, all right, but Jesus Christ, proposal.
Yep. Eric from Iowa, please keep in mind that the right wing also says that those that died of COVID actually didn't. It's always they had other pre-existing conditions and the hospitals get paid more just to mark their death as COVID. I hear it all the time from my family in Trump land. Incidentally, that's not true. People don't get more money.
In the hospital.
You don't get more money for the COVID deaths. What should we do here?
I think Klobuchar, because we've talked about COVID a lot, but the Manchin thing.
So, as we said earlier, and we'll talk a little more about the infrastructure bill, the Schumer's got a vote on Wednesday. That is a broad sort of like time to show your cards, Republicans, and see if we actually have people who are willing to vote for the infrastructure bill.
And the bipartisan one would have taken eons, or it would have been indefinite if Schumer didn't.
Right.
Give
you
this
need to
deadline.
basically. This is yes, exactly. It is a crap or get off the pot type of time, and it's also. He's put a deadline for an agreement on the Democratic top line numbers on the Democratic reconciliation bill. But the other thing that is ongoing is Amy Klobuchar is trying to convince her wayward colleagues to allow for some type of filibuster reform, maybe just specifically for voting rights. Here she is on with Dana Bash, CNN State of the Union.
It's not just my conversations. It's people like Senator Warnock, Reverend Warnock, who I'm about to see at his church. It is people like John Tester in Montana, who are in very red, purple states and who understand what's going on,
but
where
all
they're
of those
basically messing
are having
around.
An impact on him?
I think Joe Manchin listens, and I'm not giving up. I'll just leave it at that. I am not giving up.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's notable that she's saying this for a few reasons. One is that, she's not some barn-burning progressive, but I think she recognizes that Democrats need to win, and this is, in terms of just the Democratic Party's self-preservation effort, this is key to that effort. Some kind of filibuster reform. So if you have a moderate like Klobuchar saying no, who ran on I got things done, but in a bipartisan fashion, who's saying that no, this is instrumental for us to win elections in the future, our own asses are on the line, then I think some people are going to listen. And the fact that she's saying that about Manchin, I don't know if that's naive, or if she's threatening him with some sort of stapler situation, knocking on his door. Hey Joe, come on out. I'm wielding my binder of justice, or whatever the case may be.
I think it's just there's no price to be paid for her to continue to attempt to do this. I mean, I don't know. It just seems for Manchin to come out and say no exception for voting rights seems to be. At one point, we got to take him at his word. Interesting statistic I saw, though, that 65% of the people who voted for him voted for Biden. Now, he still needs the other 35%. I think people can read too much into this because much harder for him to lose that 65% support from the Biden voters than it would be the 35% from the Trump supporters.
Right.
And so, sometimes we get lost in those numbers and don't realize the dynamic. But
I just want Klobuchar to go beast mode on him, right? We need old school Klobuchar to just
throw things at him.
Physically threaten him, or not saying physically assault him, but maybe feel like he may be physically assaulted.
Imagine him as a staffer of hers.
Right. That's all she has to do is just imagine he has a lot less power than he does, even though that's hard for him to pretend because, he's usually on a Sunday talk show himself. Imagine that he's working for her, that he's completely subordinate, and then maybe, she'll bring out some of her old tactics, be a little more convincing. Make him an offer he can't refuse, aka keeping his fingers intact or something like that.
Let's watch something gross, shall we?
No.
We got to.
Okay. Don't
James
ask
Carville.
him.
They sort of they just wheeled this guy out. Of
Did
all
you call
the
him Carvel?
Carville.
Are you hungry?
Yeah, exactly. Whatever. James Carville. I already made it clear. That's my thing.
You made it less gross.
Mispronounced. James Carville gets out there and just usually pretty wrong about a lot of stuff. And this is just, I don't know, full-on offensive, it seems to me. Here is Carville responding apparently to AOC's tweet.
Great.
How do you assess the White House handling of the developments there from a politically strategic standpoint?
Incidentally, we should say that they're talking about Cuba. Here we go.
First of all, the whole Caribbean, it seems like between Haiti and Cuba, they're both, huge Cuban population here in the United States, and there's a pretty sizable Haitian population. No one thought the Caribbean would be on fire. I think they're doing fine. I don't know what, maybe I don't think they'd take humanitarian aid from us. And it seems like the sanctions we put on them are kind of working because people are getting sick of it. Hopefully, I don't like that government either. I hope they get rid of it. I mean, I really do. But I don't think there's much appetite for America to have any kind of military presence or anything like that.
Yeah. President Biden used some pretty tough words.
No,
Cuba a
sorry. I mean, no, we're just okay with, we don't want military, that's it. You're saying, Brendan? Yeah. I mean, we don't want troops on the ground. We're just okay with kind of starving them in order to, I guess, advance one specific agenda. As long as it doesn't look like we're actively taking steps and people aren't fully aware of it, we're okay with causing significant harm to people. And I think it's working really well, though.
It's working really well because we're now in how many years has it been? 60 years? How many years have we had these Cuban sanctions going now?
Well, despite the brief respite under Obama, 60 years.
60 years. It's going well. There are people who have lived and almost died like a natural life without the largest trading partner in their hemisphere, allowing goods and services to go there.
And they got to witness this beautiful moment of punctuation in a pandemic where the United States is not just starving them, but we're also essentially blocking essential medical supplies.
And understand what the game here is. The idea is that they don't want democracy to flourish in Cuba. They want a catastrophic failure by the government so that in the rebuilding process, it will be out of the hands of the people as much as possible so that, and this is the idea, I don't know that they could pull it off, but so that those families that had their businesses or whatever it was that they felt like essentially nationalized, that they will be able to go back, these very wealthy families, and get that stuff back 60 years later. And they know that the chances of them being able to do that if Cuba becomes a democracy are very, very slim.
But we get to say it's a democracy, right? Because that's part of the sanitizing of foreign policy by people like Carville and, even Blinken or whoever's in power, running the West exec foreign policy apparatus under Biden. As long as it doesn't look like we have troops on the ground, we can commit whatever harm that we want. And it's all in the service of capitalism as the United States sees it. So that must be inherently moral.
Is there more? Here we go.
Escaped it.
Right, totally. And I don't like communism. I don't know, any Democrat that I hang around with thinks that communism, totalitarianism is abhorrent. So, and when they say this without any lack of what's going on, it damages the party because people have to answer for this. Why are we sympathetic to Cuba or Venezuela? I have no idea. But I'm not in that parade, I can tell you.
Yeah. Here's something you say.
Wow.
You
know.
I don't know. Maybe because they're human beings.
Yeah, you're not invited.
The reptile parade is like half hour from now.
Yeah, we didn't invite you on, our show because we didn't need a guy who just, to roll out of bed and give his hot takes that are
Speaking
stuck
of
in
his bed,
1986.
Brendan, maybe you can look up his house. I don't know if people have seen James Carville's home, the decor that this guy.
Well, to be fair,
is it so over the top New Orleans?
Mary Magdalene may get a say in it too. She was a Bush administration official or a Cheney. Yeah. Wow.
So there's.
What is that? Right in the middle of right in New Orleans?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's right in New Orleans, Louisiana though.
Yeah. I love how his marriage,
right on the water. That's nuts.
It's always portrayed as this like Democrat and Republican coming together when they are just identical ideologically, pretty much, right?
Calling from a 240 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Fabio, and I'm calling from Colombia in South America.
Fabio from Colombia. What's on your mind, Fabio?
So I was a long-time follower of Ben Shapiro, and from the very beginning, I wanted to see him debate someone on the left. I listened to his podcasts with fascination for his concepts and his supposedly common sense ideas, but I did some research and I was not able to find anyone on the left who was willing to debate him or something, or he debating someone on the left. It seems I did not do my research fully because I did not hear about you, the Minority Report, until the crowded event a couple of weeks ago. And from that moment, I went to your YouTube channel and I started to get into all of those videos where you debunk Ben Shapiro and his ideas, and that has been a lot of fun for me. So I'm calling because I would like to hear who else I can get to, what other programs or what other debaters I could look up who are good as you at the Minority Report are at debunking the ideas of the left and proposing good arguments. Debunking the ideas of the right and proposing good arguments in support of the ideas of the left. And conversely, I'd like to hear from you who are good debaters on the right that you respect and that you would like to debate one day.
Okay, yeah. Who's good on the left to do this stuff?
I would say Ben Burgess. He has a YouTube channel, Give Them an Argument, and he also wrote a book. You should subscribe to Ben Burgess. Burgies is his last name.
I mean, there's, it's sort of, I have to admit that I haven't watched a lot of these type of things, to be totally honest.
People like Richard Wolff, he does some of those things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pac-Man, I've seen have some good questions on, with some people on. I mean,
David Pac-Man.
Yeah. David Pac-Man. I mean, I don't know, from how far of a leftist perspective, and there's other YouTubers out there like who, Vaush does a lot of debates.
I can't speak. I haven't seen them personally, but
what's his name? Sorry?
Vaush. I can't, vouch for all of them, but I have seen like clips of. Seen some clips of like I think we covered him like with Tim Pool. That was pretty fun to watch. I mean, the problem is that a lot of these right wingers, the big name ones, will not engage in this stuff.
Right.
I mean, I had a debate with Charlie Kirk at Politicon. I thought he did a fairly good job. I don't think he. I think he's like can talk pretty quickly, and it was like I don't think he did a bad job.
He was competent, definitely.
Yeah. There's somebody contacted us, and we've got to take some time to just like set it up. But that policy guy, I can't remember. But I wish I could say on the right that. Oh, wait, who is that guy? I can't remember from the Post years ago. Bald Indian American guy. Used to be on Hayes' show.
Was he like a National Review guy?
Yeah, or I don't know if he was. I can't remember. He was always a bright guy. But the problem, I mean, to be honest with you, in all honesty, the problem that they all have, it seems to me, is they have an ideology that is just sort of distasteful to people. Like they don't have, like they've abandoned the whole, deficit spending sort of pretensions, and there's not much left for them to argue. I mean, that's just the bottom line. There's just like, and so I don't know. I mean, there may be specific points that somebody could debate about, but they don't do well if you question what they're saying. I don't know how else to say it. I mean,
how about libertarians?
How about libertarians?
Yeah.
You can go, and we have a long playlist of libertarian debates. I had one most recently with the head of the Ayn Rand Institute, and they also, it's the libertarianism in conservatism that they have a very tough time to defending, frankly. The rest of it is just sort of like opinion that I don't like certain people. But it is it's the libertarian economic ideas that make it so hard to argue if you're a conservative.
Libertarians are worse than conservatives.
They're just more naked about it. And conservatives are basically like libertarian. I know a little bit of libertarian economics, and then they just say, but let's be honest, here's a lie about black people or women or whatever it is, and that's my argument, that they're bad. But yeah, if you're interested in libertarian debates, I got a ton of them on the channel. Just go look at the playlist.
All right. Hey, it's really awesome, and I'm really glad I found you guys. Thank you so much for taking my call, and stay safe.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye. That was we were very international today.
Yeah, I'd love to start flipping some Colombians.
Indisputable with Rashad Ritchie. It suggests Lauren in South Carolina. I'm not familiar with that show, but that's what Lauren, South Carolina suggests. 8 Cheese regarding Cuba. So essentially, we're good with the right of return for Cubans who had owned business in pre-Castro Cuba, but no such right should ever be afforded to Palestinians. Yes, and I would say that, frankly, much better argument that that there should be no that kind of right of return in Cuba, because it was Cubans who made that decision in that country at that time, as opposed to what happened to the Palestinians. Ray on the IM, early again, Crowder again, or Brett Weinstein? Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. Question about the new hire. Are B and R the first 2 letters of their first name or their initials? Or are you just giving us random letter a day and we're using assumption against us? Like when you said, sorry, we had to start the show. Did I just give away this tease for a few more suggesting this possibility? No. BR, those names, those letters are in order, and they are the first 2 letters of this person's first name. And are we due to give another one today?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you
A.
Jump the gun, BRA.
BRA. Just gave it. Brah.
Hey, brah.
Jimmy Dorable. Hey, Emma, just checking if you're sticking with your pick of Suns besting my Bucks, or have you seen the error in your ways?
I said it would go at least 6. I didn't realize how hard I was rooting for the Bucks until Saturday, and then I was like legitimately screaming at the TV. So I really hope the Bucks win. I really do.
Jimmy Dorable, I don't understand the Republican math here. They're convincing their supporters to not get vaccinated. The only people dying are their unvaccinated. They must be really believing their own in their voter suppression bills. I mean, to be honest with you, I think that is actually where they have. I don't think you'll lose enough Republican voters that it's going to implicate their vote. But I think, broadly speaking, that is the strategy. It is, we are not going to expand. We are going to bring our voters out. Shore app, Bucks and 6, Emma. Jeremy, Gary Clean. What?
Bra is saying that I don't know how you guys could have heard Bra.
Rayhan. Yes, sorry.
And think that it's Brianna Joy Gray.
Right. It is not Brianna Joy
Also,
Gray.
just given everything, it's not that person.
No. It is not
that
Brandon.
Would be funny, though.
Brandon would be a good guess.
Yeah.
Also, Barack Obama was not a good guess.
Barack Obama was not a good guess. What?
You should use that for Third Love, though.
Brandon Straka? I'm not going to comment.
Hashtag walk back.
Yeah, exactly. Walk around. Walk around and return. Rayhan. It was Rayhan, yeah. Jerry McLean. UK has the highest daily infections in the world, yet we're fully open as of today, not to mention 3 days of anti-vax protests yesterday in London. 50% of those newly infected are fully vaccinated, and the Delta variant is more contagious. We are now the America of Europe.
I gotta say, there's certain parts of British politics that seem even more far gone than ours. Like Labour. I saw there's a Labour MP that was quoting Ayn Rand yesterday. Just
really
dropped an Ayn Rand quote on the timeline.
Well, you know, what's her face? Thatcher. She was a big partner of Reagan's.
Yeah.
Do you want to take some of the IMs? I just got to run for 1 second.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Valley Girl, is the new hire Brad Pitt or Bradley Cooper? Left is best. For my purposes, I no. I love Bradley Cooper, but for, aesthetic reasons.
What was the question?
The new hire is not Bradley Cooper or Brad Pitt.
No, neither of those guys. Although it'd be fun to smoke with Brad Pitt.
Yes, I'm glad that you covered your bases with the IM. Train Boy says, give Amtrak more money. Trains are good and we need more of them. It's makes sense, very apropos with your name. Lorin, South Carolina says, Sam, tell the Columbia caller to look at Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie. I think that's a new program on TYT Network. I haven't gotten a chance to check it out yet. Shane from Canada says, TMBS videos, specifically the debunk segments, are great. Yes, always look up old TMBS segments. He kind of covered a lot of these IMs. Eric from San Diego says, how do we push back against the hegemonic narrative that communism equals totalitarianism?
Well, I think the start of it is I think the model is, and what I'd like to see the squad do, is the way that you de-emphasize Hamas and rockets, right? Like the wide aperture shows that we've been starving this island, and like any sort of critiques of the culture of it, I think should come from people that are similarly situated. And I think the main thing is just we have to end the embargo.
Right.
And then otherwise, like I think a lot of that is just Cold War propaganda going to have to die out.
Yeah.
Somebody guessed that our new hire is Coop.
Bradley Cooper?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you the story, my Bradley Cooper story?
No.
I don't know if I told you guys. So
I want to hear it.
Bradley, and I was friends with Brad back in, like, I don't know, the late 90s. And he was doing or maybe mid 90s even, he was doing a travel show. He was the host of a travel show. And at that time, I was doing sitcoms, and he was like, I don't know, I want to get into, straight entertainment. I'm like, oh, man, I don't know. Your show sounds actually like fun to do. And anyways, that was sort of like the dynamic, and we would hang out a little bit back in the day in New York. And very nice guy.
Yes,
and
good to hear.
I saw him, over the years, and then I saw him in 2008. I'm at the DNC, and I'm hanging around with Sarah and Sarah Silverman, who was there, and other people from the Creative Coalition. And so I was in the Creative Coalition box, essentially.
Okay.
These are just like a bunch of actors and stuff like that. In fact, I took the bus in with them just because I was hanging out with Sarah, and Brad was there. And so I see him, and I'm talking to him, and I'm thinking to myself, now I'm out of it at that point in terms of like show business. Like I'm not, like I was always very bad in paying attention to what was going on in show business.
Okay.
But, by 2008, I wasn't, I had been doing this for 4 years, and I was like, I barely paid attention to any of it. And I'm talking to him, and I'm like, just saying to myself, like, don't ask him what's going on. I don't want to embarrass him and make him feel bad, like his career's going nowhere or anything like this. And so I just like completely avoid talking about business and not raising it. And I had no idea at the time that he was like about to be like on the verge of being the biggest star in the and I'm just like,
you're trying to be nice.
Poor Brad. Like, dude.
By that point, he was in Wedding Crashers. Like by the Wedding Crashers came out in 2005.
Oh yeah, no, he was big. He just wasn't like Tom Cruise big, but he was pretty big at that point. Completely ridiculous of me to assume that his career was going nowhere, just because I didn't even know. I guess he was on this other show, Alien or something like that, or something with
Alias. Oh, my mom loved that.
I had
show
no
with
idea
Jennifer
he was
Garner.
on that show. I had no idea that I had just assumed he hadn't been working in years.
That's hilarious.
And I was like trying to be just like,
I love that about you too, because I mean, you would think that given the fact that you have friends who are comedians, friends in the business, you're just like completely unaware of the industry and
I have no idea what's going on. But even when I was in it, like I would meet like with like actors, and they'd be like, "Did you see the?" And I'm like, I had to pretend. I had to pretend. I just didn't. I just.
I was right. That was 2008. What, The Hangover came out in 2010.
Yeah, I think he was probably shooting The Hangover at that point.
That's
But that was pretty funny. And every now and then, like I get word from somebody that they've run into him, and he is asked, like, "What's going on?" I mean, if
With
he hadn't
you?
done that movie, yeah, I knew him back in the day. Laura, I have been rewatching the clip of you. It was really embarrassing, because I think at one point I said, like, I ran into Brad.
That guy
What's he
down
doing?
on his luck.
I haven't seen him in anything. And of course, it's because I haven't seen anything. And I just assumed. It was pretty embarrassing. Like, I think I had told Sarah that. She just looked at me like, what is wrong with you? Laura, I have been rewatching the clip of you discussing Alex Jones and the Satanic Cheerleaders. It's still one of the funniest clips on YouTube. Sam's impression of Alex Jones is brilliant. It's been a long time since we did any Alex Jones stuff. I mean, they claim that if you suppress misinformation, it actually grows. But tell that to Alex Jones. That dude is hurting. He probably still has his crew. But the fact of the matter is, it hasn't expanded.
He's just like sustaining off, supplements like
Milo Yiannopoulos.
testosterone.
Here's a perfect example of this.
Yeah.
Howard Stern. Now, Howard Stern paid $100 million probably twice over. The show continued for 20 years after he was taken off of, not quite 20, it was like 2005, 6, 7, somewhere around there. And he goes behind a paywall. And there is no doubt in my mind that his audience has not grown. It is smaller. There's no doubt in my mind. It doesn't matter in terms of him personally. You know, look, I don't, at the end of the day, I don't, if Alex Jones was to get wealthier, but his information reaches less people, I'm fine with that. I am fine with that. I mean, I don't think he should make $1, but it's not about the money. It's about how detrimental they are to society. And deplatforming, it works. It works. Silverball Stud. Hello, MR crew. Wanted to thank you for the masks. Teaching all day in a mask is quite difficult, but still so needed, sadly. The MR masks are comfortable throughout the day, and people get the message. Can't wait for my tank top, though summer school will be over by then, and it'll be stiff collars 4 days a week again. Daddy Smithy. Did you guys cover the story about Florida now requiring university students and faculty answer a survey about their political beliefs? This will be used to punish students and faculty. It's insanity. I haven't seen that. Vinny Holiday, if someone had the virus last fall, are they as protected against Delta as a vaccinated person? My understanding is no. That at one point the antibodies, you know, generally speaking, a second shot, though, one shot of a mRNA, though, I think would raise that significantly. You don't need to. Kay can answer. For young kids under 5, what precautions should we be taking as their parents? Both of us are already being vaccinated. I mean, I think the idea is, you know, this is what we're doing with Saul. If we go into a closed location, mask. Indoors. Outdoors, it's not as much of an issue, but he's very vigilant. I mean, he's still, you know, afraid. I mean, that's the age where, like, old enough to be aware of the threat, too young to sort of like be able to nuance it. It's been 10 years of Sam debating libertarians, so I took a deep dive in MR Classics this weekend, and it seems as if nothing changes. They all keep bringing up chickens and cows in their logic and eventually trip and pig shit at the most basic question. I didn't realize Walter Block had a second debate that had less screaming but more insanity, with every altercation leading to an infinite amount of courts to who to determine who stole a wallet. Yeah, that was amazing to me.
The journey that I've had with libertarianism, from like first being exposed to a Ron Paul guy in like college in like 2008 and being like, oh, this is an interesting philosophy. They're anti-war. Like I went to a guy's house and he had a book, Karl Marx, like something on his shelf. I'm like, oh, this libertarian. And I think he was reading his like opposition research. But then to do this job and then to see that actually it's just repetitive and there's really nothing new that they bring to the table, except maybe this like crypto wrinkle is maybe giving us a little bit of a...
What continues to fascinate me about libertarians is that, I mean, surely there must be some that have thought this through in a way like where they've actually had challenges to their philosophy that has made them think about this stuff in a deeper way. But it is just stunning to me that regardless of who it is, I thought Yaron was, you know, not as batty as some of them, but at the end of the day, it still sort of falls apart under the slightest bit of scrutiny.
Yeah, it's like the moment that you think, am I crazy? You just go back to reading Murray Rothbard.
Well, I mean, it's like an ideology, or it's like a religious ideology or anything. It gives someone comfort to know that they have a framework they can return to that's set and fixed.
It's exactly what the function it serves. It also is one that ends up putting them at the top of the heap. And that's always nice.
I mean, so does religion. So, I mean, it's kind of the same situation.
Clown Shoes Tucker and his guest are literally yelling fire in a crowded theater. Biden should have the FCC cut the wires at Fox and let them fight it out in court. There are dead bodies on the ground to prove it. The FCC does not actually regulate Fox. It is not a broadcast channel. It's cable. FCC does not have jurisdiction there. All right. Should we take one more? One more call. Calling from an 806 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello.
Sam. Hello.
Yes?
This is Kaveh. This is Kaveh calling from Texas.
Kaveh calling from Texas.
Yes. Texas. Yeah. Hello, Emma.
Hi.
Hello, Matt.
What's your name? I'm sorry.
Kaveh.
COVID?
So yeah. Yes. COVID. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
So yeah, I want to say that your audience base is growing. I'm actually Iranian.
Okay.
So so you are quite international.
Thank you.
Yeah. If I may, I want to talk a bit about leftist strategy. So, as consider myself Iranian leftist, especially talking about leftists in the U.S. So something that I bit maybe frustrated, but also I can understand the situation in the U.S. Because I have a living experience here. This kind of the leftists, I understand this position of anti-imperialist position, especially against Iran.
We just lost
We lost your phone.
Oh, go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, the anti-imperialist, yes?
Yeah, the anti-imperialist. I'm definitely understand that line about U.S. intervention, in the Middle East and around the world, and the whole disaster. I mean, we experienced that, especially in the coup 1953.
Right.
And it was completely against the communist, revolution. It was completely against the democracy there. But something is problematic here, conflating a regime, very much apartheid, fascistic regime, Islamic Republic, with some the system in Cuba. I know the system in Cuba isn't democratic. There's authoritarian tendencies there, but what we experiencing in Iran is fascism 101. And sometimes I get frustrated because the leftists in the U.S. I know there's an opposition to somebody crazy like Mike Pompeo and these neoconservatives, but the problem is really the biggest obstacles against any progress, any democratization, any socialism in Iran is the Iranian government itself, before anything else. And I think may I just the last thing, and in a very complex way, I think Iranian regime helping the global capital, and in a way it's ironic, I know, but it's in a way it's in the service of imperialism. In a broader sense. I'm not going to the details about the whole capitalism in Iran, because Iran definitely is a form of capitalism. It's a different form, but it's completely about plundering, and right now, if you know, there is a 5 days. It's huge protest in Khuzestan going on, and they are killing people in the street. People protesting because of water. They cut the water.
Okay, Kaveh, let me just. I'm not 100% sure of the point you're trying to make, but I want to think about the leftist strategy. What we can do here. Well, the problem is this: is that I think that first off, I think that if the United States was to come out in support of any type of protests in Iran, it would be difficult for Iranians. In terms of that would be used against the dissidents. I believe that the nuclear deal that Obama pursued very helpful if the long-term goal is to get Iran to open up and allow for, to the extent that one can encourage the citizens of Iran. I think the less ammunition hardliners in the Iranian government have as to, the great state in the United States, the better for the long-term prospects of the people of Iran. I mean, that's
Yeah.
if you look at like any type of like revolution or empowerment of people, that's the way that it comes. It just becomes, you don't have the ability to sort of draw on nationalism in the same way to create this outside enemy. That's the best I can say, in terms of what we can do. I think there's a really strong sentiment in this country, on the left anyways, and broadly speaking, that we as a country have effed up so many different places that maybe it's time that we take a little break from doing that.
Yeah, I completely understand that. I disagree with you about this hardcore, and I don't think. Rouhani right now Rouhani's president, and it's supposed to be more moderate, but this is happening in Rouhani's time. It's not Ahmadinejad.
Well, I think it's
the line is clear there.
It's helpful that the United States, that we broke that treaty for them, and certainly empowering.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. But what I'm saying, for example, let's say, maybe I can give more details about that. Like, very much undialectic anti-imperialist in the left. I'm thinking like somebody is like Max Blumenthal. What Grayson is doing that. I understand what they are doing. Probably maybe in some of these more socialist tendency countries may make some sense, but in Iran it doesn't. They are bringing, for example, people from close to Iranian regime to just lying. It's so propaganda. Unbelievable. And for example, this National Iranian American Council. These guys are propaganda. It's propaganda arm of the regime. They are just repeating what regime is doing. And right now, they are again. This crackdown is happening in Khuzestan. They actually siege the.
To be honest with you, I cannot explain the politics of those people. I cannot explain it. Honestly, it doesn't. Sometimes there's no rationality to it, as far as I can tell. All right, let me do my trick. If my Farsi is still pretty good, why don't you say something? I'll see if I can translate it.
Like what?
I don't know. Just say something in Farsi. Do you speak Farsi?
Okay. Yes. Khuzestan Teshne.
Oh, shoot. I guess I'm a little rusty. Sorry. All right.
It's fine.
Appreciate the call.
We literally had this conversation with Bra the other day where he said, I don't speak Farsi.
Oh, I thought he didn't speak enough to satisfy Grandma. All right. Appreciate the call.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the call. I'm sorry I was more passionate today because of what's going on right now.
It was great. I appreciate the call.
You're all good.
Hang in there.
Thank you very much.
All right, bye-bye.
Yeah.
All right, that's
Love
it, folks.
that proof that Sam was only half listening.
No, I heard that conversation. I thought Grandma was like, you don't speak enough.
Well,
now we've really we've given a huge clue as to who.
There's a few. You could find out.
All right, folks, that's it for our call portion of the show. I'm going to read 6 IMs, and then we're going to get out of here. Heather, you had an expert calling out how normal masks can't help us beyond 30 minutes, and you didn't follow up? Seriously, Sam? That was so informational, and no one told so openly before. What do you mean follow-up? Well, you just missed a follow-up. What was the follow-up?
I think they're trying to say they were annoyed about the claim that masks, some masks aren't as effective as others, I guess. I don't know.
First of all, that is
It's true, but like the implication they're saying, I don't agree, is that, you know, then people are going to take from that, oh, don't wear one.
No, it's just that was so informational and no one told so openly before. I mean, were people not aware that N95 masks are more effective than cloth masks? Is that, I mean, I think we didn't know the specifics in terms of like the timing within you know, but.
What they're taking issue with was the 30 minutes, or maybe what Osterholm was saying. I can't recall exactly what that point was because it wasn't like that fine a point.
Well, where are you in a closed room for 30 minutes or more?
A train.
I guess a train?
A bus.
A bus, assuming there's no ventilation.
Yeah, assuming no ventilation.
I took the train this weekend. I was thinking about that.
But trains have actually been, at least last I heard, it was safer than you might have expected, probably because there is ventilation.
There's ventilation in those trains, and certainly on planes, they're filtering the air. This is in a closed environment, I think, where it's pretty rare that you'll be in there. But I think the idea, I don't know. I guess I just didn't find that terribly. The only thing I found surprising about it was that they were actually able to quantify it so specifically. But the dynamic didn't surprise me. But if you have a specific follow-up that you're talking about, we can look into that. Tinte Iro Green. All right, let's get back on the line again. Conversational numbers related to COVID. Lord, I'm dumb. 908 number. I don't know what we're talking about there. Seb Gorka's back pain. Can I get a shout out for myself? My best friend and I decided to take a break from our friendship until my mental health improves. Filled with sadness, but you guys are really anchoring me to reality. Shout out to Matt in particular. Seb Gorka's back pain. Hang in there. I'll give you one of these.
Charge.
All right. Train boy. Give Amtrak more money. Trains are good and we need more of them.
I read this one, yeah.
You read this one already? Okay. Is this me? I love to drive drunk, and frankly, that's my business. So you can't judge me on my personal choices.
Yeah.
Left Leckening. Can you do an interview regarding the wellness community? I grew up around a lot of people who are really into raw milk, mineral solution, candida, taking teaspoons of turpentine, and nearly all of them have transitioned into full-blown anti-vax and QAnon people. We have already done that interview.
Yeah.
What was his name? German guy. Jules. Yeah, we've done that interview.
I know somebody who did.
What is it? Jules Evans.
I know somebody who got through Facebook into essential oils and had a health scare with that stuff.
Oh, Jesus. All right, two more, and then we're out of here. Cower with Crowder. Tucky is a master of JAQ-ing off. And the final I am of the day.
Charge.
Not sure if you all saw this, but Charlie Kirk and TPUSA were so brazen by a conservative porn star scheduled to speak at their event that they kicked her out.
Yeah.
Likely due to their precious religious beliefs.
Hashtag canceled.
Funny seeing as Kirk is only speculating, probably coked up half the time. Interesting split on the right wing now. I don't believe that Kirk is. I think they all just.
That's what he's always doing.
Is he? I think it's all. What do you call it?
You think it's all Adderall? I'm not convinced.
All right, folks. Brendan, Matt, Emma, Bra. Good job today. We will see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth